This is a place.
This is the place?
This is a place. We want to talk about. This is a place.
Thank you for listening to This is the Place podcast. My name is Brandon.
I'm Nate.
We want to wish everyone a hoppity Power Rangers Day.
Oh, yeah. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Let's see. It doesn't say Mighty Morphin, but it does just say Power Rangers. So
I'm assuming
I think
they're
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers is a different day. I think that's in
Mighty
September.
Morphin Power Rangers. I remember that Power Rangers coming out. I think we talked about this before, but it's like, oh, the younger generation than me. So it was like I just missed like the demographic age for like I just wasn't into it because I was a teenager.
Yeah.
But I just remember like all the controversy and it was just all over the media about how
How
the
violent.
violence and yeah. So I know what it is and I've seen enough of it to know the premise of Power Rangers, but I didn't ever really watch an episode from start to finish.
It's been
Even though I
30
did watch,
years.
yeah, I remember watching. Didn't they make a movie a couple years ago?
Yeah, they did. I did not see the movie.
I'm like that had potential, but it didn't hit the way they thought it would, in my opinion.
Yeah, I had my Power Rangers phase for a while. I never was super into it, but I did enjoy watching it for the action-packed adventure. But it's a fun there's some fun history about it. It says it can be traced back to the 1970s when Marvel Comics agreed to exchange ideas with the Japanese television production company. It was at that time that the Japanese version of Spider-Man was created. 3 series of Super Sentai were also created around this time, which gained immense popularity in Japan. Power Rangers was created as an American counterpart to Super Sentai. The plot was modified a little bit to fit into the American television standards. The series Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was created with 5 teens dressed up in colorful suits fighting monsters and robots like Zord and Megazord, who were adopted from Super Sentai. And I think they used a lot of the same footage from the other show. I might be wrong on that, but Power Rangers was
Yes,
a
I think I saw a video on that where they used the Japanese film to and just yeah,
yeah.
it's a little controversy behind that now. But as a kid, you don't care. You don't
Yeah,
even
you just
know.
want to see the
I
fighting.
mean, have you've gone back and watched movies that you loved when you were a kid, and you're like, what, why?
This is what I
And I like,
watched.
why do I like this so much?
Yeah, so don't forget August 28th, the day of the Power Rangers. Make sure you celebrate accordingly, however you would do that.
I actually have, what do they call it, morph suits?
Okay.
I have a couple Power Ranger ones. I have a
Oh,
blue and white one that I used to wear to BYU games.
okay.
And one
So
time when I had my long hair, it got caught in the zipper and I couldn't get it out. Anyways,
so watch for Nate
so I'll be at the playground with Brandon and he'll be the big monster, the green monster that I have to fight
at the playground, huh?
at the playground.
Okay. Just the playground?
The playground.
Okay.
You
Cool.
know the one
You know the one. In the fourth district, right?
in the fourth district.
That brings us to our episode topic for the day. We had the chance to interview somebody who is a potential US congressman for the fourth district here in Utah, one of our potential reps. So we spoke with him, and it was a pretty cool and insightful conversation. A lot about the two-party versus third-party system, about him and why he's doing what he's doing. So let's take a listen. All right, today we are joined by Vaughn Cook, who is running for fourth district in the U.S. Congress for the state of Utah. Thanks for coming on today, Vaughn.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, tell us, who are you? Who is Vaughn Cook? What do the people need to know about you?
Well, I'm the guy to vote for. That's pretty much it.
I mean,
All right.
The basic, yeah.
That's a wrap, Brandon. Let's go.
Yeah. I was born in Utah. I have roots that go back 4, 5 generations. Early pioneers were some of my ancestors. Um, Raised up in Cache Valley, a small town called Hiram, and I graduated from Skyview High School, which is not in the 4th District, but it's up in Smithfield. And then graduated from Utah State University. I have a degree in political science, economics, and business, and I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I am also an Oriental medical doctor, so I've gone to acupuncture school, and then finished a doctor's degree in Oriental medicine. So I have a fair amount of clinical experience. My business experience ranges from real estate to software. My current company is a software company, and we build technology that brings Eastern and Western medicine principles together and is used by health professionals and wellness advocates. And we've got customers all over the world. So I've been doing that for quite a while. And I've been, excuse me, I've been politically active my whole life. So most of my life, I've been a Democrat. That's just because I'm probably a bit of a contrarian. You know, in Utah, you should be a Republican. Everybody knows.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I got to the point where I'm a moderate, and I've always been a moderate, and the Democratic Party just kind of drifted too far to the left, made me uncomfortable. The Republicans were too far to the right to make me comfortable. So about 7 years ago, some friends, we got together and started a new political party. It's called the United Utah Party, and it's really a home for moderates. So we've got people who were disenfranchised Democrats like me, or disenfranchised Republicans, independents, and it's been going. It's a strong third party. Third parties are typically small, so compared to the number of Republicans in the state, we have fewer, but we have a significant number and gaining momentum, I believe, each election cycle. Let's see, what else can I tell? Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'm not really super knowledgeable in politics, but I do think the two-party system is way overdue and outdated.
Yeah,
Do
I
you ever see it coming more of a norm where we have more than two parties in the broad scheme of things? Like more independent people like this? I mean, how long has it been since we've had three presidential candidates? Was it Ross Perot, the last one who?
Yeah, he was the last one.
So I'm like, because I feel like I think you're right. I think there's so many of us that are like, okay, the left is way too far left, and I'm supposed to be right, but they're way too far right. Where's the middle ground, right? And where's that person that's in the middle, like you're talking about?
Yeah.
So I just wonder what your thoughts are, and if there's ever going to be some changes with that.
I think the change is in the wind. There's 51% of the population of the United States voters who identify as independent.
Wow.
Yeah, so there you go.
So if you had an independent party, that would be the largest party. I think 23% are Democrat and 26% are Republican, how they identify themselves. So those two parties are really the minority. And, you know, we're so ingrained in the two-party system that we think that these are the only two options, and we act that way. In Utah, we think the Republicans are the only option, so we act that way. But I think with your generation, we're seeing that change. We're seeing people saying, "Hey, maybe there is a better option." And honestly, that's why I'm running for Congress. If you look at Congress, the U.S. Congress, the way it's comprised right now, there are 429 voting members. And of those, 217 are Republican and 212 are Democrats. Now, you're always hearing, that we've got to maintain control of the House. They call Congress, it's called the House. And so the Republicans want to have the majority of the representation there because and the Democrats the same, because whoever has the majority controls who gets elected to be the Speaker of the House. And the Speaker of the House is a key position because that person controls what comes onto the docket. That's significant. Let me give you an example that happened just recently. Mike Johnson is the Speaker of the House. He's a Republican because the Republicans have the majority. So they all voted for him. None of the Democrats did, but he got in. And earlier this year in the Senate, some senators got together, Republicans and Democrats, and they crafted an immigration bill that would have reformed immigration, and it would have created a better situation with immigration than we currently have. And it passed the Senate. It was bipartisan, and Democrats and Republicans, enough of them voted for it that it moved from the Senate into the House. In that process, President Trump calls Mike Johnson, who's the Speaker of the House, and says, Mike, I don't want that bill to pass because I don't want Joe Biden to be able to take credit for legitimate reform in immigration. And so all Mike Johnson had to do was say, oh, this bill is not acceptable. It doesn't have some of the things in it that we want. And so I'm not even going to put it on the docket. And so the bill died before it had a chance to even see the light of day. Had it gone into Congress, there would have been enough bipartisan support for it that it would have passed. But then Biden would have gotten credit, and that wouldn't have helped Trump, at least in Trump's eyes. So that's why the majority position in Congress is so important to these political parties. The challenge we have, and I hope I'm not just going on and on, you guys interrupt me anytime.
No, you're good.
The challenge is this. The challenge is that the Republicans don't have much of a majority. And so they have to vote as a block if they want to move legislation forward, unless it appeals to enough Democrats, they can get some Democrats to vote with them. In the cases where that doesn't happen, what it means is, okay, I'm the Speaker of the House, I'm the head of the Republican Party in Congress, I've got to have all my members vote with me. And if 2 or 3 or 4 defect, then we're not going to pass this legislation because I'll lose that majority position. And when you have that situation, you drive the power to the extreme edges of your party. So in politics, there's a thing called the political spectrum. And in the middle of the political spectrum is democracy. And so we're a democracy. We rest in that middle position. Well, it's not just one point on a line. It's actually a lot of points on a line. And there's the point in the middle. That's what you would call the moderate position. And then as you move to the left, those are the Democrats. And some Democrats are moderate. And as you move further to the left, you get the more extreme ideologies. The opposite is true as you move to the right. Those are the Republicans, those are the conservatives. And as you move more and more to the right, you get the more extreme ideologies. And so what it means is in this case, the House, which is controlled by the Republicans, the power moves to these extreme edges because these people with very rigid ideology can blackmail the rest of them and say, hey, I'm not going to vote for you unless you put into this bill some of these more radical, what some of us would consider radical, some of these more extreme ideological, provisions. If you then look at that spectrum and you go further to the right, you get into a dictatorship. Further to the right, you get into a fascist government, you get into totalitarian. So you get into a strongman kind of political situation. If you look at that spectrum further to the left, beyond democracy, then you get into socialism and you get into communism and things like that. So the battle is always, where are we going to sit on this political spectrum? And I believe what needs to happen in Congress, because we do have a fair amount of dysfunction because of the two-party system. What we need to do is we need to elect non-Republicans, non-Democrats to the point that those parties lose the majority position. Neither one of them have the majority position. And what that does is it pushes the power to the middle. It pushes the power to the moderates, because you can't get anything done unless you're willing to compromise and negotiate with people who are not in your party. And when that happens, then we will have a situation in Congress where we'll have the political chutzpah to actually address some of these issues that just never get addressed because it's not in the best interest of the two-party system. Things like campaign finance reform, things like immigration. So some of these bigger challenges that seem to just get kicked down the road, and everybody's blaming the other people. The Republicans blame the Democrats. Well, we could have done it, except these guys are bad. And the Democrats are saying, hey, we could have gotten something done, but these guys are a threat to democracy. And it's just this rhetoric of blame instead of cooperation. But that's not going to change unless we can push this majority position to a minority position and load the center with enough moderate independents to allow this to happen.
So in a perfect situation, to make numbers easy, say there's 100 congressmen, right? You want 40 Democrat, 40 Republican, and then 10 in the middle, and those 10 would kind of sway. They would more look at what's the best, for the country, rather than is this the right or left bill. Right. But yeah, I like that idea.
40, 40, 20, I believe.
40, 40, 20. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did that wrong. Sorry. Yeah. So.
But yeah, that's exactly it. And if you look at the situation right now, okay, the Democrats don't have the majority. The Republicans have a narrow majority. If we could send back to Congress, let's see, you've got to have 215 to have the majority. So if we could send back to Congress 3 independent congressmen, neither party would have the majority. Now, what would happen is those 3 congressmen you caucus with somebody. So you'd either choose to caucus with the Republicans or the Democrats. And so the Republicans or Democrats in that narrow of a margin somebody would probably control the House. Somebody would get elected to be the speaker. But it would change the dynamic because, for example, let's say that the 4th District elected me as their congressman. Who am I going to be beholden to when I get back to Washington? Now, I'm going to have to pick a party to caucus with just for the efficiency of management of the Congress. But if the Republicans do something that I don't like, I don't have to vote with them because I'm not a Republican and they don't fund my campaign. They don't support me. So I'm not beholden to that party. And the same with the Democrats. If they do something I don't like, I don't have to vote for them. But I can vote for any idea that makes sense to the 4th District in Utah. It means that I represent the people who elected me, not the party that put me on the ballot.
Right.
And that's the advantage. And when you look at the math, the opportunity to make this change is right in front of us. In the 4th District, 50% of the voters are registered Republicans, and 13% are registered Democrats, and 37% are independent or third party. I suspect that of the 50% who are registered as Republicans, a lot of those people register as Republicans because in Utah, the Republican Party has a closed primary. Now, what that means is if you're not a registered Republican, you don't get a ballot. You can't vote. And so a lot of people, because they say, well, the election is going to be decided in the Republican primary, which happens about 81% of the time here in Utah, they register as a Republican so they can vote in that election, even though they may not be interested in being Republicans. They just know that's the only way they can get a ballot that has any significance. So you look at those numbers in the 4th District, and if enough of those registered Republicans voted for an independent or a third party, the number, it's feasible that we could actually send a non-Republican or a non-Democrat back to Washington as a representative. And because the margins are so slim in Congress right now, if, two other districts somewhere in the country did the same thing, and then we got together and said, hey, let's caucus as the independents instead of as the Republicans or the Democrats, the power would move to the middle. It would move to the moderate position in democracy. And instead of just being about politics, it would be about voter representation.
I love that idea because I feel like people vote one way or accept a bill just because it's their party who made the bill. It may or may not be what's best for them. It's just because, like you just said, the parties, that's what you have to do. But I think most of
it makes sense because none of us have the bandwidth to pay attention to every bill that passes through Congress. I mean, we live in a democratic republic, which means we elect our representatives, and then our representatives pay attention to those things. They represent us. And I think a lot of the political default that we see in our lives is based on the effectiveness of the marketing of the parties in our environment. In Utah, over the last probably 40, 50, 60 years, the Republican Party has done a very good job of marketing themselves to the population. And over that period of time, the default mentality for most of us in the state is, if I don't know the candidate, voting for the Republican is my safest bet.
Yeah, so there you go. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, because chances are the Republican is probably more moral. The Republican is probably more like me. And so that's what I'm going to do. And so we just check the R box and think everything's going to be fine. So now what's happened in Utah over the last 40 years, there has not been a statewide politician elected who was not a Republican in the last 40 years.
Wow.
And we now have a supermajority Republican Senate and legislature. And that's a terrible position to be in. It wouldn't matter if it was Republican or Democrat or anybody else. A supermajority means that our representatives can thumb their nose at the voters and say, screw you, you guys don't have any authority once we get elected, because we have the majority to the point that we can do anything we want to do. And we see that happen in the legislature in Utah time and again. Now, it happens in such a subtle way that most of us just don't pay attention to it. And frankly, a lot of us just get sick of politics and we get disenfranchised and we don't even pay attention to it in the first place. But it happens. And it's not that it's not that we're electing bad people to represent us. It's that the system is corrupted. And so when you put good people in a corrupted or a dysfunctional system, you end up with dysfunctional solutions and people act dysfunctionally. And that's what's happening in Utah. So, and it happens in Washington. So the idea behind let's push the majority into a minority position in Congress, U.S. Congress, that same principle holds true in Utah. The smartest thing we could do as voters is to vote the Republicans out of the majority position and allow not just the Democrats to fill the void, but let the independents and the third party candidates fill that void too, so that nobody has a majority position. At that point, you're going to get more common sense legislation, and you're going to get less frivolous pandering to the party kinds of stuff that goes on in Utah's government as well as in national government.
Yeah. if I had any advice for politics, and I tell people they ever ask me, is I think a lot of people get way caught up in the presidential campaign and
Yeah.
think that's going to change their lives if they vote correctly. But let's be honest, even if we vote for Kamala Harris here in Utah, it doesn't matter. It's going to be Republican, right? Because that's the way we are. But I feel like if you really want to make a difference in your own personal life, you got to pay attention to the local politics. Like you, somebody who's going to be voting
Yeah.
for you, that's more important to me than caring what's going to happen in the presidential seat, because the local stuff is what really impacts you on your daily basis, right? The local
Yeah,
laws
it
and
is.
everything that goes on here. So it's awesome that you've come on the podcast so we can kind of prove that point, that you got to pay attention to what's going on locally and maybe
Less
drown out
about
the
the
noise that's
president.
going on for president. But it's fun. It's especially now. This is like it's reality TV right now,
It's
right? That's
fun.
really
You say it's fun?
oh yeah. You can't tell me you
Hey,
can't tell
listen,
me that Trump doesn't
maybe we should just be
entertain.
thankful we don't live in a swing state. You know, if we lived in a swing state,
Yeah.
we'd have
Nevada
millions of
or
dollars being
Pennsylvania.
poured in. Yeah, and it'd just be ad nauseum. But the fact that we're a red state, they kind of ignore us. They say, yeah,
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like people here in Utah, mostly kind of some of them get so caught up in the Trump and Kamala Harris thing. I'm like, yeah, even you can scream whatever side you're on till you're blue in the face, but it's not, I don't think it's going to change the outcome of whatever Utah's going to vote for, right? So like put that energy into finding out your local representatives, and then maybe you can make a difference, in my opinion. So
And
yeah,
this
again,
is a unique conversation because you have to correct me if I'm wrong, but you were on Weekly Insult, right?
yes,
And then you did American Fork who
yeah.
sent you our information. In both of those cases, I don't think they were able to actually vote for you. You have a unique opportunity that Nate and we are in the fourth district, both
You
of
live in the
us.
district. That's good. I
Yeah.
think that the part of American Fork is in the fourth district,
Right.
and we actually recorded that in
Taylorsville, right?
Taylorsville, yeah, which is in the fourth district. So
Yeah.
yep.
So both, I'm barely actually not, I'm surprised how close it is that I'm in whatever districts to the west of me. That's like the Magna district. Because
that is,
I'm right on the edge.
yeah, Magna's in the I believe that's the second district.
Okay. So
The
your district that you're running for currently, we won't talk about other people as much, but currently is Burgess Owens. Is that
That's
accurate?
right.
So that's
He's
who you're
our
running
incumbent.
against.
He's our representative today,
Okay.
and he's a Republican.
And this, just looking at the map, it kind of goes from, it looks like maybe a portion or not quite to West Valley. You've got like Eagle Mountain, most of Utah County, with the exception of like the Pleasant Grove or Provo area. Then it goes all the way, yeah, down,
Takes in eastern Juab County and all of Sanpete County.
yeah, down there. So it's a pretty big, I mean, comparatively to Utah, but
Ge-
for
geograph-
population wise,
Yeah, there's about 840,000 population, which is about a fourth of the state. It's the smallest geographically.
yeah,
The other districts are bigger because they take in more rural areas.
right.
Mhm.
And it's interesting, ground zero or the four corners of all the districts in Utah is in Salt Lake. It's on 9th East and 3900 South. And if you stand at that intersection, the southwest is the fourth district. The northwest is the second. The northeast is the first, and the southeast is the third. So
Hmm.
that's where they all start, and then they fan out from there.
So if you
Huh.
can't make it down to four corners, you can go to
Just
that
go
four
there.
corners.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can just, wait for the light, but you can be in all districts in about 3 minutes.
There's a whole episode for us right there, Nate.
I know
Let's write that one down. That's
something
that's
new.
gonna be a
I didn't
heavy
know that.
hitter.
Here we go.
Yeah. Well, politics is fun, guys. It really is. And it's fun because it's serious business, but it's fun if you don't take it too seriously. I mean, you have to, the first thing you have to realize is just because I got elected doesn't mean I'm the smartest guy in the room.
Right.
And just because I might be smart doesn't mean that if we get our heads together, we're going to come up with a smarter solution. So politics, when I was in college, I learned that it's the art of compromise, and you have to be willing to give and take. And I believe that incumbent on that necessity is a requirement that you respect people who don't believe or feel or think the same way you do. And just because somebody thinks differently or wants to solve a problem in a way that's different than you do doesn't make them evil. And that's what we see in Congress so much today. I mean, I see so many political communications that whoever sent it is just saying, well, we would have done better, but these guys are, they're a threat to democracy.
Right.
And we're not getting anything done because it's their fault. They're the bad guys. And they try to paint this, they're the bad guy. And really what it is, it's a play to get us either angry or afraid.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of demonizing.
Because fear and anger are two of the strongest emotions. And if you can get me to be emotionally invested in what you're saying, I'm more likely to follow what you're saying.
Right. Fear of loss is a greater motivator than opportunity to gain.
Yeah. And that kind of activity to me it's frustrating. I think that's what disenfranchises people from being engaged in politics. I heard this and they're just complaining, or and again, I think to your point again, Nate, we spend so much time, we pay so much attention to the presidential campaign, the presidential election, that we brand everybody who isn't voting for Kamala as being, you're either like Kamala, or you're like Donald Trump. And no, you could vote for either one of those and be quite different from either one of them. It's not like you're going to.
You're immoral if you vote one way or the other.
Yeah. It's not about morality.
That's how they like to paint it, though.
Oh, yeah. Because, if I can get you to believe that the only thing that Democrats want to do is kill your babies, that's pretty emotional. And if the only thing if I can, get you to believe that the only thing, the Republicans want to take away your bodily rights, that's a very emotional appeal. And there's more to politics than just that.
Yeah, that's one of my, I guess, pet peeves when I do pay attention to politics is people that are fighting with emotions. Rather, I'm a very logical person. It's people who fight with me with emotions or argue with me tend to want to punch me in the face because I'm like, I don't care about your emotions. I want to know the facts, right?
Yeah.
So for example, I don't want you to tell me that this politician's a poo-poo head. I'm like, okay, why is this politician a poo-poo head?
Yeah.
And then tell me what the alternative is, but don't just say they're a poo-poo head because I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. That's an emotional statement. Tell me why, So that's my biggest pet peeve right now with politics is people just saying you're dumb, you're stupid. I'm like, okay, well, why am I dumb? Why am I stupid? Tell me what I need to know and what the facts are, and then I'll listen. But anyways,
most of the challenges we face in life are the result of dysfunctional systems, not bad people. I believe that our representatives are almost without exception good people. And they're moral and they're well-meaning and they're hardworking and they're underappreciated and they're committed. And in spite of that, if you put even that kind of a person in a system that over time has become dysfunctional to any degree, you're going to get your solution, you're going to have problems. And so we always have to be tweaking. Democracy is messy. And that's one of the things why people don't like it, who don't like it, is because it's much easier for me to make a decision and go do it, as opposed to talking to my neighbor and saying, how am I going to do this? And then have him and then having to agree with him before I can do anything. And there's always going to be a percentage of the population in the country who would rather have a dictator. We'd rather centralize power. Let's make this efficient. Let's just get the job done. And so those people will always be pushing for a movement to the right on this political spectrum. And then there's always going to be a group of people who think, hey, all we have to do is give people more stuff and that'll solve our problems. And they're going to be pushing us towards the left. And the challenge is the compromise between all those perceptions of, first of all, what is the common good? What should we actually be working on? And then what is the best way to serve the common good? So I can appreciate people who are on either end of the spectrum, because there's no necessarily right or wrong answer to most political questions. Now, there are right and wrong answers if it crosses over into moral territory, but we have a secular government, so we focus mostly on things that don't have moral overtones, at least in my opinion.
This may be a bit of an ignorant question on my part. Is it a rule, like, so you're running for District 4? Do you live in the 4th district, or what are the rules around where you live and where you run?
Well, that's a good question. I do live in the 4th district. You do not have to live in the district that you represent in Utah. In fact, you don't have to live in the state to run for Congress in Utah, but you do have to live in the state at the point in time you take office. So I could live in Colorado, run for this. If I win, I'd have to move to Utah before I got sworn into Congress. But I do live in the
Weird.
4th district. So
I didn't know that.
yeah, one of those. I don't
like
know
the
that
the carpetbagger. What is that? Would be like?
Yeah, it would be like being a carpetbagger. And I don't know that you could get elected if you lived out of state, because you'd get that,
People always say that.
and say, what in the world are you doing? So,
What is this guy from New York wanting to do with Utah?
Well, it's good to know for at least you live in and you are a part of the district that you
right.
are running for. But
Yeah.
if I woke up tomorrow and say, well, I'm going to run for District 2, that's something I could do.
You could do that. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. You don't have to live in the district.
It's interesting. See, I don't know if I'd ever step into politics. So I was like you. I did, my studies were in business. My original major was political science. I wanted to be an attorney. Quickly changed my mind on that. And, but I've always thought, like, if I were to run, the thing that I could go off of is I've lived almost all my life in West Jordan. So, I'm not like some outsider be like, I know this city, I know this area. And I think that does give someone more credibility. Like you grew up in Cache Valley, right? But you're still a part of Utah and you've always been here. So that makes you one of us, right? And I think
it kind of puts you in touch with the culture and the people a little bit easier. You should get involved in politics, and you don't have to run for Congress. I would suggest you run for city council, mayor, run for the legislature or the Senate. Those are more local races, and they're easier to manage as a candidate because you don't have to cover so much territory and you don't have to deal with so many people. And it's amazing what a difference you can make if you get involved at that level, and how much fun it is. It really is interesting.
Yeah.
People sometimes think, oh, I can't make a difference. Well, you'd be amazed how few people there are in this state that actually run the government.
Mm-hmm.
And if you decided you wanted to be one of them, you don't have to become a fire-breathing radical. You just need to be somebody who's interested and willing to put yourself out. That's probably the scariest thing about being in politics, is if you run for office, you basically leave a lot of your right to privacy behind. People can say pretty much anything they want to about you, and you couldn't sue them for slander because you've chosen to put yourself out as a candidate.
Right.
So that's probably the scariest part. But you can make a significant difference. And
I'm not going to count it out, but I'd probably have to go delete a couple episodes before I announce my candidacy.
Little
Kinda
Facebook
to see
post.
some Facebook posts. Yeah.
no, just say, hey, you know what? I was young and foolish.
I wish more people would understand that. It's again going back to the demonizing. You dig up everything you can about somebody. It's not necessarily because you hate that person, but it's because they're not on my team and I don't want them to win. So I'm going to look at all the bad things they've said, all the bad things they've done, just because they're not playing
And take
by
it out
what.
of context as well, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, and it is interesting landscape where you've got AI now able to do some pretty scary but amazing things. And I think as individuals, we're just going to learn how to navigate the current landscape. In other
Sure.
words, we're going to get to a point where we don't believe everything we see, and if we think we're going to believe something, we'll probably check it out 2 or 3 more ways, and before we actually hang our hat on it. But you can, again, it comes back to anger and fear. Those are really strong emotions, and if I can make my opponent look like somebody to be afraid of or somebody you should really be angry with, that bodes well for me. At least we think it does. I think in the long run it's self-destructive, but humans are emotional beings, and we can't deny that.
Yeah, 100%.
I think one good thing I've seen in Utah politics is we don't see that as much. There's not as much attacking and talking bad, at least directly from the candidates about each other.
No, and that's true. The more local the race, the less likely it is to become acrimonious. Presidential politics have been acrimonious ever since George Washington left office. I mean, it's been brutal. And if you look back historically at some of those races and some of the things they said about each other, guys who knew each other, who worked together for years, and then they decided to run for office, the gloves came off. And so presidential politics has always been nasty.
Yeah.
That's not true on a local level. I mean, it's rare that you get even somebody running for governor who would badmouth an opponent.
That's
Now,
my favorite thing of like when we're trying to pick, the Democrats and the Republicans are trying to pick their candidates, and then they have their debates and they sit there and tell everybody they're so stupid and dumb during the debates, even though it's a Republican fighting a Republican. And then as soon as they pick their person, they're like, they change their voice and like, oh, that person's amazing. I'm like, that's funny. A week ago, you were saying they were the
they
devil,
were
and now
stupid.
they're the savior. Like,
It's so
what is it?
disingenuous.
Yeah, I love.
Well, and
I mean, yeah,
I'm not saying that the acrimonious stuff doesn't happen on a local level, because it does, but it's just less likely to
yeah,
happen.
yeah. Their campaigns aren't geared towards that. It's more about how am I going to make a change. Or
Yeah.
I agree, but one way I've always said, I have a few friends that are really into politics, and they always say, "Oh, your podcast should do politics." I'm like, it's a different vibe. But I've always thought it would be fun, an idea, and if anybody steals it, then they owe me whatever. Um, is I think it'd be fun to be somebody like me and Brandon, for that matter, that aren't really super knowledgeable in politics, and kind of be like the middleman, like you're talking about, but then have politicians come on the podcast and tell us why their ideas are great and explain to us like why the Democrats are thinking this or why the Republicans are thinking this, and try to give us knowledge rather than tell us why everybody's a poo-poo head. Like, give us facts, tell us
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah.
I think it'd be fun so everybody can hear both sides of the story, because there's always two sides of the story, right? And then people can start to see, like you're saying, like they may have different ideas, but this is the reason why they're thinking this and that. So I think that'd be a fun podcast to have.
Yeah.
Well, maybe
I'd really love it.
you might be able to sprinkle some politics in with your other stuff too. And you guys go around the state, right? You kind of talk about different things in Utah.
Yeah, places, things, and
Yeah, you could
do
always
Utah.
stop and say, "Hey, we're going to talk to the mayor of, Logan today."
It's not a bad idea.
That
We
isn't a
should
bad
start doing
idea.
that.
and they could sell their community to you, and you could ask them about some of their controversial decisions. And
Yeah.
I did reach out to the city of Copperton one time to try and get someone to come on, and they they didn't respond. So I have tried,
yeah.
To no success. And maybe Copperton wasn't the way to go.
Well, you just have to keep trying until you find somebody who will.
Once they see that Vaughn was on, then people are going to start rolling.
We're credible now.
There you go.
Well, and once if they listen to this conversation, they see that you guys aren't trying to paint me into a corner and make me look like an idiot, and I'm not.
Well, there's still time, Vaughn. Don't get ahead of yourself.
Yeah, the hot seat questions are coming up.
Yeah, that is. I baited myself.
There you
go. But the point that we can have conversations, and honestly, as you talk to politicians, and I've known a lot of them over the years, and I have great respect for them. It doesn't matter if they are one party or the other. My experience is the people who run for office and the people who get elected are good people, and we've been blessed in Utah because of that, in spite of what I think is a significant dysfunction to have such a majority dominated government. I don't think that serves us well, but the fact that we have good people has both, we have a good state, and we all live in a good place. So,
yeah, I think overall, I mean, the media is trying to paint like everybody's mean, everybody's a jerk, everybody's out to get everybody. And it's, what's the word I'm looking for? A phrase like it's,
well, they create controversy where it does.
Yeah. There was a kid who just ran from Texas to Washington, D.C., or walked to bring awareness for Social Security or something like that. And he says, I was surprised to find out like how nice Americans are. Like people in general are just nice. So it's just kind of funny how everyone's trying to paint the world as doom and gloom and everybody's out to get each other. But I think in reality, everybody is human and wants to be human. So
It's true.
There's some bad apples, and that's why they have true
100%.
crime podcasts.
That's why they have the
But
TV show Cops, right? Because
for the most part, I think people just want to be good people, help each other out, and not really.
Yeah, it's human nature that you want to help,
other.
right? It's most, like you said, there are some bad apples out there, but I think most humans want to be helpful and help out when they can. So
yeah,
and I mean that's true around the world. My experience, I've traveled a lot, and the world's full of great people.
Yeah,
it's amazing. What you bring up is really the conflict between capitalism and democracy. News organizations are capitalistic organizations. They are in the business of selling content and attracting sponsors. They want to make money. And one of the ways they do that is to engage you as an audience and then keep you engaged.
Right.
And again, if they can take a story and spin it in a way that creates controversy and gives you as the viewer an opportunity to boil up your emotions in one way or the other, you're more likely to keep coming back. And that, I think, that's the challenge with the media, is they're in the business. They're not in the business necessarily of reporting things as they happen. They're in the business of attracting viewers and keeping them engaged.
Yep.
And their product is information. And so they give us information, but they spin it in a way that serves their purpose. It's interesting. I've spent time in China and in Europe and other places, and I will watch the news in those countries, and they spin the news in a way that makes them the heroes and us the bad guys. And you come back to the States and you listen to the same story, and we spin them as the bad guys and us as the heroes. So, everybody does it. But you just have to realize that's just the nature of the beast. So everything I read in the paper isn't necessarily true, and the spin they put on this story isn't necessarily reality. So if you look at things and take it with a grain of salt, you become less disenfranchised.
Yep, they're about like the newsies say, they're about selling papes, right? They need the headlines.
Yeah. Yeah. We need the headlines. Yeah. We need the big clicks, guys.
Yeah, we need
Yeah.
the clickbait. So hurry and do something wrong right now, Vaughn, that we can throw out there.
What's your
Okay.
most embarrassing story, Vaughn?
Oh, at my age, I don't think there is one.
It's all in there. No, I'm just kidding.
When you're young, you get embarrassed, but as you get older, you realize, oh crap,
I don't
you know,
care anymore.
I just, yes, this is a faux pas, but I'm not going to be embarrassed about it. So away
Yeah.
you go.
Well, I do have two hard-hitting questions outside of politics, if that's okay.
All right.
At least two, and I'll leave it open for Nate if he's got more. But I am curious. So you've got your foot in. So we try to do places a little bit more. We've covered a lot of places, and we like to go visit and check things out. Somewhere we haven't been as much is the Cache Valley area.
Uh-huh.
So my two questions are: one, what is your favorite thing about maybe Cache Valley, that place
Okay.
outside of your district at this point, and then your favorite thing about your district you're running in?
Well, Cache Valley is a great place. The temperature there is about 10 degrees lower than it is in Utah County, where I live,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much year round. So if we're having a cold snap in Utah County, it's going to be 10 degrees colder up in Cache Valley, and the summers are 10 degrees cooler than they are here. It's a green place. It's a beautiful place. Great place to raise a family. If you want to move up there and raise your family, you'd not go wrong.
Yeah.
I lived there. I've lived in Utah County for 35 years, probably. So
Okay.
my kids were pretty much raised in Utah County. But Cache Valley is it's full of, if you're looking for a good wife, that's where I found my wife. So, you might send your boys up there to school, or your daughters up there to find a husband.
Yeah.
um,
I was almost an Aggie. It was close. My brother still lives up there. So
yeah, yeah, it's a good place. Um, it's close to the mountains. There's lots to do that are outdoorsy, but I think we can say that no matter where you live in Utah, we've got great outdoors opportunities. The fourth district, I think that honestly, it's the people. Yeah, and I think it's probably the people in both places that I like best. The fourth district is like Utah. It's diverse. We have different people. We have different colored skins. We have different religions. We have different socioeconomic backgrounds. But it's just full of good people. And regardless of what our differences are, even though you might look at us and say, well, you're a bunch of white people, there's quite a bit of diversity. And it's like you said, Nate, is when you get out and meet people, it's surprising how good they are.
Right.
And even people who you would think, because of what you've heard in the press, might treat you poorly because of the differences, they just don't treat you poorly when you're interacting one-on-one. And we all want the best for each other. The challenge is, what is the best? And, how's the best way to help each other?
Yeah. We kind of relate it to like BYU and Utah fans, right? We always say we hate Utah. Well, Brandon and I are BYU fans, so we hate Utah. It doesn't mean we hate the people. Because I got plenty of friends who are Utah fans. They're just led astray. But yeah, I think that's what, we do in America, is we make it think that there's two sides and you have to be on one side and you're fighting against the other. But at the end of the day, we're all just humans and want the best for each other, right? But
well, we can kind of equate it this way. So there's BYU in Utah. You could probably put one as Republican, one as Democrat, even though the colors don't match. But
that's
then
funny.
you got the
Yeah.
Aggies. They're kind of like the independent. Like BYU and Utah, they're like they're okay. We can agree on them. They're the middle ground. They're the
It's true.
independents in this equation. But
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's when I was in college, I would go to the games and be embarrassed by the fans. It's like, oh my gosh, these Aggies are acting like a bunch of heathens. And then I go to a BYU game and it's like, oh my gosh, I thought the Aggies were bad. These guys.
Oh, I
Yeah.
know. I say the same thing. I'm a BYU fan. I've had season tickets forever, and I'm sometimes just shaking my head with the stuff that BYU fans say. I'm like, oh, come on.
They're heathens with less language and no alcohol.
Well, most of the time, yeah, anyways, not to I might get in trouble, but a lot of the BYU fans, not a lot of them know football all too well or sports. They just are fans because of it's BYU, right? So that drives me nuts when, like, I think I've told Brandon 100 times the year, what's his name? The Hail Mary guy just had a brain fart.
Tanner Mangum.
Tanner Mangum, when he threw those two Hail Marys in a row, then I had a girl the whole season, every play, Hail Mary. I'm like, you don't throw a Hail Mary every play. You know what I mean? But she just heard the term, so she thinks that's what it is. And anyways, but yeah, it's fun. Sports is fun. Sports is like it's like a small taste of what politics can be like, right? Is you're fighting over your team or your side.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
um, but fun stuff.
it is fun.
Well, Nate, you have any more questions?
No, I got a joke.
Let's hear it.
Oh, good.
All right. Um, I heard a comedian the other day say that the difference between a Republican and a Democrat's like your uncle who keeps promising to take you to Disneyland, but never does and tells you how great it's going to be. And a Republican is your uncle who says he's going to take you to Disneyland, but goes without you. I thought that was pretty clever.
That's a good one.
That's all I've got.
Okay. Well, Vaughn, is there anything else you'd like us to know or potential
No,
voters to know?
it's been fun to be here with you too, and best of luck in the podcast world. And I hope to see you on the ballot at some point, you two. So I'll keep my eyes open.
Don't hold your breath, but we'll see.
Well, I won't hold my breath out, but I'll keep my eyes open.
There you go.
I will ask this: what if people are looking to get involved with you or with what you're doing? How can they do that?
The website is votevaughnccook.com. It's VOTEVAUGHNCOOK.com. And we have a place where you can sign up for a newsletter, or you could contact us and say, hey, bring me a sign. Or you could click on the donate button and donate some money. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Will there be any debates or anything we could see in that? Do they get into that?
There is a debate scheduled for October, I believe it's the 24th. In order to qualify for that, I have to be polling at a certain number. I'm not sure what that is or when the deadline is, but we're trying to get that. We're trying to get exposure as fast as we can to meet that. The interesting thing about a debate, however, on the 24th of October is that mail-in ballots come out on the 15th. They get mailed on the 15th. We'll be receiving them on the 18th. A lot of people will have voted by the 24th. So it's an interesting timing, but there is a debate.
That's interesting.
One of the nuances of Utah and politics in general, right?
Well, it could be. I don't know that there's any, scheming that went into that, honestly. I just think that sometimes they have a lot of candidates, they have a lot of debates, and some people get better positions than others. And the 24th isn't before November 5th, but it's a lot of us vote before November 5th. So.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Well, we'll keep our eye on you, Vaughn, and appreciate you coming on, reaching out, and happy to talk with you and hear more about your experience. And it just kind of goes back to what we've already talked about, just getting to know somebody. I don't know. I haven't heard anyone say anything bad about you, but if they do say anything bad about you, they can come back and listen to this podcast. Know you're a great guy and you're just trying to help everyone out, and that this is your way to do it.
Well, that's the goal.
I mean it when I say it, that he's a nice, genuine guy. It's great to see that those are the type of people that you could vote for that could end up representing us. We've said it time and time again, we're not a political podcast. We don't get into the politics. Maybe based off what Nate said, maybe we'll get into that. Create a
Spinoff.
podcast. We have lots of spin-off ideas. That could be one of them. But it is cool to just be able to speak to different people and hear their, the cool things they're doing or trying to do.
That is correct. No, it was fun to hear more not necessarily insider knowledge, but just kind of the way politics really works.
Yeah.
Like I said, I know enough, and most of my knowledge comes from the media, which isn't probably a great source. But I'm always saying too that I would love to, and that's why I came with the podcast I did. I would love to hear both sides. Like I want to hear them layman terms, like why a Democrat thinks this way and why a Republican thinks this way, and try to find the middle ground. So I think there's a lot of us out there that can identify. Like, I mean, we have our parties that we belong to, right? That you have to get your ballot.
Right.
But I think a lot of us are kind of in the middle where we're like, well, we just want what's best for us. And it's not always black and white with the either party and what they want to accomplish. So
It is important, not to say I'm going to vote for this person, we're going to vote for this person, but it is important for you to at least have that opportunity to go and vote. Maybe you feel like you don't have a voice, and maybe in some ways that's true if you're in certain places. But at the end of the day, going back again to what you said earlier, the local stuff does have more impact than the national voting
yeah,
for president. So if
yeah.
you're going to get involved, you're going to vote, at least do it for the sake of these local races, and not just even the Congress or the Senate, also your local
Yeah. I mean,
people that represent you in your
we
city.
have a Senate and we have a House here in Utah.
Yeah. Yeah.
State senator, right? Just like on The Office,
The state senate, right?
state senator. So yeah, I think that has more impact on our daily lives than caring about who's going to win the presidency seat. So
Yeah. So learn about who your candidates are, learn about who's running in your district so you can make an educated decision and go from there. And now we've presented you one of those options.
that's what we do.
That's what we do.
We give the people what they want.
Give them what they want. Little different of what we do, but always happy to have. We're never going to turn anyone away on the podcast, right? If someone came to us, is there any situation where we turn someone away and not have them on as a guest?
Just if they're a Utah fan. That's about it.
Oh, good point. Good point. We don't want to do that. If Kyle Whittingham, I know he's a big fan of the podcast. If he reached out and was like, guys, look, I know you love BYU, but can I please let me come on to your podcast? Would we say yes?
I think we could be bribed.
We could be bribed.
Or maybe we could
Give
get
us an
some
NIL
we could
deal.
get some insider knowledge to give some tips for BYU
Yeah.
to beat them this year.
Yeah, Kyle, you could come on if you tell us, give us your playbook. Just slip it, just slip me the PDF. Kyle, if you're listening.
Kyle, he is listening.
Well, once again, thanks for listening to This Is a Place podcast.
And this was a politician we just talked with. And now I'm heading to the playground. You can meet me there.
Yep.